Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Venice podcast. I'm your host, Sheevani Desai. This episode is to give a little background as to, who I am and why I decided to dedicate an entire podcast to the great Elaine Venice. I am an actor, comedian, and writer based out of Denver, Colorado, and I am a huge Seinfeld fan. And beyond that, I am a I can't emphasize how big a fan I am of Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And really the first time I fell in love with her, there's been many times, was watching her as Elaine Venice on Seinfeld. I started watching Seinfeld as a tween. I think I was 12 or 13. I have entries in my diary at that age talking about Seinfeld episodes. And I think what I connected to was just how left of center the whole show was in general. And with Elaine in particular, I had never seen a woman sort of carry her own weight in a cast full of men, and she wasn't the girlfriend. She wasn't the mother figure. She was just another friend in that foursome who was having her own issues and her own relationship problems, she had a storyline and it had nothing to do with her being with any of the men in the cast we'll get into the reason why they brought Elaine on, because that was the intention, and we'll get into all of that on the first episode. But to me, as a young girl watching that, and a young girl who dreamt of just a career in comedy, it was so impactful for me. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus's performance as Elaine to this day is one of my favorite references to go to for inspiration. And I find myself drawing on so many of her choices when I'm thinking about comedy and what I want to bring to the world of comedy in my own way. I am so excited to dive in episode by episode and look at the Elaine character, focus on her storyline. She really brought something special to that show. The reason I thought of doing this podcast was actually when I was listening to, I think what might be considered maybe the most thorough rewatch podcast for Seinfeld. It was a podcast called Signcast, hosted by two men, Vinny and Matt, who did an amazing job. So incredibly thorough. I highly recommend it to anyone who, loves the show and would love some behind the scenes trivia or, some facts that they might not have known about. It's a fantastic podcast. As a woman listening to it, however, and I guess also a woman in comedy, I always felt a little bit thirsty for more when it came to the Elaine storyline. I just always thought there was so much more to talk about with Elaine and her contribution to each episode. So I don't know, as I was listening to it, I was like, oh, I could do that and maybe fill in that gap. Perhaps the same gap in Rome that Putty gives her a hard time about. At any rate, I am super excited to dive in and episode by episode each week cover what did Elaine bring to that episode. I'm excited to go into the impact that the Elaine Venice character had on just how we perceive women in comedy and female characters in sitcoms, because it certainly had a lasting impact far beyond Seinfeld. And people often refer to Elaine Venice as the casual feminist who moved things forward as far as the female landscape goes in the world of network sitcoms and comedy in general. The format of the show is really going to be a weekly deep dive into each episode. It'll be mostly me talking, but I have recruited some amazing friends and hardcore fans to send in audio clips when they feel they have something to share about the episode that I'm covering. And that way we can get some different opinions and different perspectives. And maybe it's just some cool stories about someone's memory, of watching that for the first time, or what it brings to mind when they watch it again. I'm so excited to have those included in the show, and I'll respond to them. And, hopefully it'll make for a really fun experience for all Seinfeld fans, and especially all Elaine Bennis fans and Julia Louis-Dreyfus fans. I think I'm just going to call her JLD for the most part, because I love you, Julia, but your name kind of is a tongue twister for me. If you would like to be a part of the show and send in audio clips about episodes, please contact me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's ELAINE podcast@gmail.com. I really hope to hear from you, but even if I don't hear from you, I hope to have you as a listener. Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis Podcast. Stay tuned.